there's a lot out there in the media, even documentaries, about people breaking away from their religions.
And we actually found a couple who is breaking Mormon. And this is Chick to Chick.
I watch a lot of documentaries.
I do
really
too.
Love them. I like a lot of the ones that have to do with religion, whether it's like years ago, you remember Heaven's Gate?
Yes.
Okay. Or then there's Leah Remini has Scientology.
Scientology.
Breaking Scientology. And then the other one has been, about FLDS, or even, we're near Lancaster County and a lot of people are talking about breaking Amish.
Yep.
So I'm always intrigued at why people are in the religion that they're in, but more importantly, what was the catalyst that they got out? And oftentimes it is really hard to believe that when you're talking about religion, that it can be so difficult on a person's life. We just don't think about that. I go to church, you go to church.
Yep.
And it just it feels simple. But I just always find these documentaries interesting, very interesting about what goes on behind closed doors, I guess.
Right. And so our point of reference is whatever religion you're involved in. If you're a Catholic, that's all you know. If you're Protestant, that's all you know.
Right.
If you're some other type of Christian, that's all you know.
Right.
And so then to see these documentaries, you mentioned the FLDS, which was Keep Sweet, Pray and Obey, about this
Warren
polygamous group. And these older members of this church marrying these young girls and having multiple wives and 20 children, and how some of the members then broke away. Very interesting, because we both know a couple who broke away from the Mormon church. Now, I want to be clear about something.
Oh, there's a lot that's different about all that.
We're not here to discredit any religion. We are not here to talk poorly of any religion. This is just their story of what happened to them as Mormons and when they left the Mormon church.
Because I'm always interested, because I love these documentaries, and we just happen to have folks that are actually here to talk with us today.
And everybody has a story to tell, which brings us to our guests today, Kevin and Julie McLean. Thank you guys both. Thank you for being here today. It's interesting how this podcast came about. I just bumped into you guys. We started chatting and you started telling me your story. And I said to Carrie, this is a podcast. So, Kevin, you were the first one to break away from the church. Take us back. I mean, this is all you guys know. You were born Mormons. You grew up Mormons. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I was born into the church and raised an active participant in the church. I served a mission for the church in North Carolina. Found Julie, married young, into the church. We raised our family in the church. And it was kind of about the same time that our kids had left the house and we were empty nesters. And it just, the Mormon church or the LDS church has a big conference. They call it General Conference twice a year. And it was the 200th anniversary of the first vision that Joseph Smith claimed to see God in Jesus. And this was going to be a big celebration. And so I kind of just started thinking about that and had more time. Now we're empty nesters and just saying, do I really believe that really happened? And I had questions and doubts kind of lingering in my head my whole life. And I said, this is the time that I really got to dig in. And I actually started my research on the church's own website and studied what they call the LDS Gospel Topics Essays, and found out the timeline was very inconsistent. And there were multiple versions of this vision. And then that just started me down a rabbit hole of research and putting everything together. And then shortly after, my shelf broke and lost my faith in the Mormon church.
What was that like for you when you had that epiphany and you had that moment?
It's a emotional roller coaster of deep sadness, grief, pain, sorrow, anger, frustration that you've been lied to and deceived your whole life. A narrative is told to you, a certain pattern of events happened a certain way, and that you're part of something that is God's one way back to heaven. and you believe it, and then you realize that it's not true. It's a story, and it is devastating, and it makes you question everything and what is right and what's wrong and
what's real,
what's not real. And the worst of the worst people, as far as like rankings, they have levels of heaven. The lowest level are those who actually leave the church.
The apostates.
And we're called apostates. So,
and that was my next question here, the fallout from this. Kevin, you leave. Julie, you stayed in the church.
Yeah.
Julie, what was the fallout and what was happening with you because Kevin left and you stayed?
It's interesting because I think a shock was my first reaction. I didn't see it coming. It came out of left field in a lot of ways, well, in every way. I don't think I came to for about 2 months in that. I don't remember a lot of June and July of 2020. But we did a 6-week seminar on how to have a mixed faith marriage. It was fine. It was okay. But there was still so many things that we had to navigate through. It took me 6 months to even look. And then it took me a good year to finally just go to my authorities and my leaders and say, I'm done, I'm out. I still am a member technically because I have not resigned. But it's really painful in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's really hard.
It's really hard. I mean, we can sit and say, oh, we did this and this and this, and here we are, today, and we're doing great. But the process of it has been excruciating.
Yeah.
It's the only thing we've ever known. I was all in. You were in, all in. If I was to get on a scale of 1 to 10, I would say I was a solid 10. I served, I interacted, I taught, I ate, slept, drank Mormonism. That was our lives.
Yeah.
And so when the pendulum swung and I was out, I literally went from a 10 to a 0. We have 3 children, and 2 of our children asked us, does this mean you're getting a divorce? Mm. And we were like, no. I mean, and this was even before when I was still very much brand new learning about, Kevin's kind of transitioning out. I was still holding firm. I was going to church every week. I was still doing my service and callings. I was doing all of that. And so I just was shocked that was I thought religion is really going to break up families, and it does. It does every single day. Families break up left and right when one leaves.
So you're talking about your own family and you talked about the church family. Have you been shunned by either family, your church family and members of your own family, because you made this decision?
I would say
lightly.
People are disappointed. We've got friends that are still active members of the church, but we don't.
Yes.
Not many, and it's really hard because it's harder for the members that are in because they don't know what to say or do or what's off limits, or
it's awkward. They're afraid of us.
Yeah.
I have friends that everything's very surface now, that it's what used to be a deep friendship or connection it's just different. And like we used to talk regularly, and I might talk to her. I haven't talked to her actually in a long time. So in that case, I think that friendship of about, 25 plus years is gone.
But that's what you put out there.
Because you left the church.
Yes. All because I've left the church.
And you've got relationships and with your family that are strained.
Yeah.
People are disappointed, that's their emotion. That's their decision.
And that's
we
their
always
narrative.
express our love, and we want to keep a strong relationship with them. But it's hard.
We are the same people we've always been,
Mm-hmm.
but if anything, we're better. Mm-hmm. We're stronger. Mm-hmm. We're more aware and just loving, compassion, thoughtful, just so much more aware. I think our kind of those blinders have been taken off. And we, see things a lot more clearly than before, because we're conditioned. We're conditioned to think a certain way or to believe a certain way. And even though I didn't think I had a lot of prejudices, I think that I had some underlying currents of that without even knowing it, because it was part of just how I was raised. I mean, from the cradle, this is my life. And I'm 55 and now I'm no longer.
If we know that God is a loving God and we are people who are of faith, it's so hard to wrap my head around that people who are in faith, they're walking that faith, that they are not loving and appreciative of whatever it is. So I'm listening to you, talk about that. It seems like there's parameters on that. And so now that you're out of it and you are still faithful people, I'm going to assume, I can't imagine that you haven't extracted the love of God from now the things that you've garnered and what you do now. So how do you walk in faith now in this, having broken away from the Mormon church?
That's a great question. I will tell you probably 75% of people that leave the Mormon church become atheists because you're taught and conditioned. This is the only way. Nothing else matters. This is God's church. So once you realize that's not right, then we already knew all along that the other stuff wasn't right either. So the whole house of cards crumbles. So now there's a rebuilding of faith that has to happen, not kind of what's left. And so for me, we talk about, we've got pictures of Jesus in our house and his teachings are what are most important to us. Maybe some of the literal things with Jesus, we're not so sure about because so much, we're not sure what to believe in many cases. So, but the teachings are good and they help you in life and give you a moral compass and direction. And that's kind of where we're at right now.
We're at that, think of climbing a mountain. We've always said, we were taught that there was just one way up. That was it. And if you deviated, and they would call that the iron rod. And if you hold on to the iron rod and stay strong, then, you'll have eternal life. Well, we are off that iron rod path, if you will, according to with leaving the church. And we're just looking at there's many ways up that mountain. There's so many ways to go. And we might try something and say, you know what? All right, that was good or that was great, but it just didn't work. So we'll look at something a different way. And it's just opening our eyes to different patterns, different ways of looking at things, different viewpoints. Our mindset's completely changed in a healthier way. Much healthier.
The one point I wanted to make as well is we were very happy in, because that's all you know. It's the world you know. It's the Truman Show. The bubble that you're in is what you know. We were happy. We had a happy marriage, but everything was kind of surface, and there was really always this barrier,
veneer.
Yeah, this face that you had to put on, and it was hard to wear all these multiple hats at work. Then you'd go from church and to family, and to balance it all. And after a while, it just it's emotionally taxing. And now you can just be yourself. And that's so refreshing. And that's where
not worrying about the judgment of, one another
100%.
Or, whether it was real judgment or self-imposed judgment of what that looked like. Yeah.
Well, we thank you both for coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Mm-hmm. It's a remarkable story. It's a story worth telling. And just, again, thank you so much for being open and honest with us.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the time.
Thank you. I think what they said was so important that, we have religion out there. Again, this is not to disparage any religion. They were telling their story, but at the end of the day, isn't it important that we just be good humans?
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's what always shows through. It always shows through. We appreciate you listening to this podcast today and being with us. And we hope that you will come back when we are chirping about another topic.